Hey everyone, this is Jen and you're watching BPD Woman. On this channel, you will learn to live more effectively with your borderline personality disorder. Using skills such as DBT along with my personal advice and experience, I wish for you more effective behaviors, less emotional lability, more emotional regulation, and the ability to understand your emotions and behaviors and change them so that they can work for you to achieve your goals in life, love, career, whatever they may be. While I am not a life coach or a psychologist, there is one thing that I can answer that most of those folks cannot, and that is, what is it like to live with borderline personality disorder? I was diagnosed over 20 years ago, and since that time, I have committed those 2 decades to my recovery. That means multiple rounds of DBT. That means years of one-on-one and group therapy. That means reading every text and filling out every workbook and then going back and doing it again. It's literal blood, sweat, and tears. You get the idea. I'm committed. So if that all sounds good to you, please hit subscribe and the bell below so you never miss a beat. I produce anywhere from 3 to 5 videos each week, all something new to offer, and I'd love you to check them out and leave your comments below. So let's get going. Let's talk about how a childhood game has an impact on how and when and if you develop borderline personality disorder. Now, there's not one thing that contributes to just developing borderline. It's not, people can be abused and not develop the disorder. People can be invalidated their entire life and grow up and not have the disorder. People can be highly sensitive persons and not develop the disorder. There's no one thing that is a final be-all end-all to developing the disorder. However, there is one theory that is rarely talked about in borderline therapy, borderline recovery, in the borderline realm. And it wasn't until actually 6 years ago, so we're talking about 14, 15 years into my diagnosis, that I first heard this phrase and theory from a friend of mine who had actually read the book by Dr. Sherry Manning, and I'll throw it up here, Loving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. And he'd done some research, and I was like, and when he told me more about this theory that I'm about to share with you, I was like, of course, that's definitely what's happening with me. So let's talk about it. So do you remember this growing up? Peekaboo! Peekaboo! I see you. Perhaps you do this with kids now, right? You'll be like, I see you, buddy. There I am. Here I am. My dog is jumping up. She's like, yeah, I'm here. What do you want? Okay, so peekaboo, the peekaboo game, okay? Maybe mom and dad played this with you when you were growing up. Then as you got a little bit older, you played a game with your friends. So now we're talking middle school, grade school. Who has played hide and go seek in their life? Raise your hand if you ever played hide and go seek, right? Hide and go seek, right? People are hiding. You're finding them, they're there, it's a great time. Now, what do these two games have in common? And are they just childhood games that are just, superlative, they don't mean anything? What is it with those games? Well, those games essentially are someone hiding themselves, but then showing you that they're still there, right? It's someone that's hidden away, but then afterwards comes back to you, right? They may be out of your sight, but you know that they're not out of your life, right? Hidden, but not gone. We call that object constancy. Those games growing up may seem like just little fruit-la-las that have nothing to do with childhood development, but in fact, the very opposite is true. Playing hide and go seek with your friends, having mom or dad play peekaboo is designed, okay, stick with me, to bring you security when you're growing up. It's meant to teach you that when mom leaves the room, she's not gone forever. She's coming back, right? It's meant to teach you that when dad goes to work, he'll come home, right? That when dad comes home, you'll have dinner. There will be no arguments, okay? When you're playing hide and go seek with your friends, they go off, they hide from you, but you find them, they're still there, right? You can still depend on them to be there. But what happens if you grow up and mom or dad doesn't play the peekaboo game? Or what if mom or dad does not come home from work every day and have dinner? What if instead every day something different happens? What if mom goes to work and then doesn't come home for 2 days because she's on drugs? What if your dad's working 2 jobs and you don't get to see him, and then when he comes home he's too tired to talk to you, so you don't have anyone to process your day with or ask for advice growing up? The things that a parent things that a parent would instill in their child for their development, right? An investment in their time. Now, I'm not talking about every now and then. Like, of course, like, we're talking about a greater percentage. Of course, your parents are going to be tired and not always have time for you. Of course, sometimes mom's going to be gone on a business trip a few days. We're talking about a pattern of consistency where your parents, the people that are designed to bring you safety, love, object constancy, don't provide it. That's what we're talking about. So if building a trusting relationship with your parents and seeing them over the course of months, years, decades, sticking to a standard and expected way of thinking or patterns or behaviors or states of psychological wellness or their moods, if that stays pretty even Steven, you learn object constancy. You learn that people will come in your life and primarily they will stay there even though they have to go to work. If object constancy was steady in your life growing up, that people later in life, you will learn then that people will be mad at you, but they also still love you. You will learn that you can have an argument with a friend or a family member, but you can still maintain the relationship. You can learn that it's okay that you get angry and honk your horn at someone, and that doesn't mean that you're a big fucking asshole for the rest of your life, right? Does this sound like shades of gray? Well, it is. So if you don't grow up with reliable, present parents, and they could be physically unpresent, they could be absent, they could be physically absent, they could be emotionally absent, they could be psychologically absent, right? They could have their own mental disorder, they could have a drug addiction, right? You could live afraid of them. What happens then if you grow up in that environment, which I did, right? Raise your hand if you grew up in that environment that I just described. Anger, beatings, violence, drug use, physically unemotional mom and dad, right? How about, did you have to become the parent like I did? So what happens then as you get older? Well, what happens then is a few things. One, you choose the same patterns because they've become normalized to you. Normalized chemistry is not always a good thing. I've talked about this before, that sure, if you grow up with 2 healthy, attentive parents with their heads on straight and that are there for you in the most present way possible, then you develop you repeat those patterns and behaviors in your relationships as an adult, and that's a good thing. Those are nice things to mirror. But if you have been exposed to parents that are aloof or are violent or have mental issues, right, then subconsciously you seek out those same patterns. And so what is up to us now is to create our own peekaboo game in order to develop trust, emotional stability in ourselves and with others. We have to learn to create object constancy. Now that can be really difficult because you have to relearn what a healthy, present person relationship looks like, right? And it's healthy to write out a list. It was helpful for me, right? This is what I grew up with. Okay, this is what I'm used to seeing. Alcoholism, arguing, not being reliable, mom canceling all the time, mom staying in bed all the time. Now make a separate list, make a second list over here. List what your current relationships look like, your friendships, your partner, right? Your best friend. List what those relationships look like. And then in the third column, list what your preferred or ideal relationships look like. And then notice if there's patterns and if there's dissimilarities, right? You're looking for patterns. And if you want to change the patterns, it is possible. And it's called object constancy. It's the ability to know that someone is in the next room, but they're coming back. It's the ability to comfort yourself by saying, my spouse is angry with me right now, and we're taking a physical little time out in other parts of the house, but we still love each other. He's not gonna just leave me, right? It's knowing that you can exist as a good person that does bad things sometimes, poor choice of words, but I think you understand what I'm saying. It just takes time. Just like with all of this recovery, there's no fast forward button. We really wish there was. But what I recommend is helpful here is the out of sight, out of mind, right? That even though when it is out of sight, they can still be in your mind, right? Just because your husband's not home right now does not mean that they're not coming home ever. Just because you can't reach your mom on the telephone right now, that does not mean that she's ignoring you and that she's never going to talk to you again. It could mean you have a job interview that doesn't go well, but that you know that you will succeed in another job interview, right? It's this idea that even though blips come up in your life, there's a constancy about it. There's a baseline to it. There's a baseline to a person's reliability. There's a baseline to who you are. And sure, blips happen, but you have to challenge yourself, as uncomfortable as it's going to be in the beginning, that, okay, my boyfriend's mad at me, but he's not leaving me. This has been a big one for me, right? Like I'll get in, maybe I'll say something that I think is offensive. I'm an expert over explainer. I'm an expert over apologizer. Perhaps I'll say something and like maybe I won't hear back from the other person. And then, a couple days later, I may be like, sorry if I overstep my bounds in saying that. And they'll be like, oh, not at all. I just simply forgot to reply. I mean, you have to take them at face value. But now I'm at a point most of the time where if I don't hear back from someone, I don't assume the worst. Again, it's incremental. It's not all the time, but it's definitely for me a lot easier and with more success that if I don't hear back from someone, I'm like, okay, they're busy. They are tied up with something. They are on a call. They forgot to reply. They think they replied. They didn't hit send. I usually now at this point in my life don't go to they hate me. And if I do think that they hate me, I'm like, well, okay, some people can hate me. That's fine. Nothing I can do about that. I like me. That's all there is to know. But if you are choosing unhealthy people and repeating these patterns that you learned in childhood, I can definitely reassure you that object constancy is working its way in. Now, why isn't it really talked about in the BPD realm? I had never heard about it. It was 14 years in before my friend said it. And I was like, oh, well, that does certainly make a lot of sense. I don't trust someone if I don't see them. It presents in other ways. Think about this. You have a really great outing with someone or a really great time. Okay, and you think about it super positively on a Monday. But then by Wednesday, you are second guessing it. You're replaying the tape different. You're like, well, you know, they kind of grimaced that one time. Maybe they didn't really have a good time during that party. Or, oh man, why did I make that joke? Nobody's going to like me now. That's object's constancy working against you. That you can't leave a good situation in your mind as it was good, right? You haven't seen those people in a few days, so now you're thinking you haven't seen them because you've done something wrong. That's object's constancy. It could be with, you know, you're expecting a spouse home and they come home at a certain time every day, and one day or 2 days in a week they come home at a different time, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're dead. I know they're not coming. They're cheating on me. I know they're cheating on me. I'm going to go search their social media. I'm going to go through the trash cans. As you can see, it bubbles right into catastrophizing and the worry wheel and just dysregulation, right? But if you were able to sit with some object constancy, you'd be able to tell yourself, my husband loves me. We have a pretty solid relationship. Sure, every couple has their ups and downs, but I know he's coming home. Boom, that's object's constancy. It can take a long time. When it's out of your sight, I know it's hard for it to stay positive in your mind. Believe me, I've been there. I've done the worrying. I've done, oh my God, he's dead. I've done the catastrophizing. I definitely understand how all of that works way too well. What are some, and now, so why isn't this talked about in the BPD realm? Honestly, I don't really know. Like, I mean, give it a go, you know, Google object constancy and BPD in a search engine and see what happens. You know, there's maybe one or two articles on Psychology Today. I highly recommend psychologytoday.com. Such a wealth of great, mostly great information on that site and articles that are super useful, but there's not a lot. I don't know why. Let's get a discussion going. Share your thoughts below. What do you think about developing object constancy? Has it affected you? Can you relate to any of these behaviors that I've chatted about? What are some ways that you can challenge your cognitive distortions into something more positive to help your object constancy and kind of snap you out of it? Drop me a line. My name is Jen. You've been watching BPD Woman. I really thank you for tuning in. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And until next time, and everything you do, please be effective. Bye-bye.